Mr. President, before I speak on the amendment that I am co-sponsoring with Senator Klobuchar, I have 11 unanimous consent requests for committees to meet during today's session of the Senate. They have the approval of the majority and the minority leaders, and so therefore I ask unanimous consent that these requests be agreed to and that these requests be printed in the record.
Without objection.
Mr. President, I'm proud to stand here with a distinguished senator from Minnesota to offer an amendment that prohibits members of the Consumer Product Safety Commission from taking trips paid for by the agencies they regulate. Not long ago, this body overwhelmingly voted to prohibit members of Congress, members of this body, from taking trips sponsored by lobbyists. That's what there was an overwhelming bipartisan vote for. There is absolutely no reason why members of the Consumer Product Safety Commission should not be held to the same high standard, particularly given the outstanding number of products that were recalled last year because they were deemed unsafe for American consumers to use after they were placed on the shelves in our stores, bought by our families, used by our children. Perhaps most disturbing, the most common victims of these regulatory failures were children. Children who played with toys and slept in cribs that the Consumer Product Safety Commission allowed to come to market. Children who were seriously injured as a result. Last year we saw toxic toys shipped in from China, laced with lead paint that could cause permanent neurological damage or death. We saw car seats dump out the kids who sat in them. We saw beads that contained a chemical that could put children into a coma if swallowed. We saw cribs that would fall apart if an infant pulled on their pieces. This year is shaping up to be just as tragic. In January, there was a recall of toys with magnets that could cause fatal intestinal blockages if swallowed. Last month, we had a scare about children's sketchbooks coated with potentially fatal levels of lead paint. So the question Americans are asking themselves, isn't somebody supposed to be watching out to make sure this doesn't happen? And the answer is absolutely. That is the very mission of the Consumer Product Safety Commission, to make sure products sold in the United States are safe for American consumers, safe for our families. But members of the Consumer Product Safety Commission were busy doing other things. There are a lot of problems plaguing the Commission, and I'll return to the floor to talk about many of them another time. And I certainly appreciate the distinguished work that has been done by the chair of the committee and the ranking member in moving a bill that I think goes a very long way towards achieving the goals of knowing that in America our families will be safe from the products that are put on our shelves, and I commend them. But one of the biggest problems of all is that while the members of the Commission were supposed to be regulating the safety of products sold in the United States, members of the Consumer Product Safety Commission were taking trips sponsored by the very companies they were supposed to be keeping an eye on. Mr. President, we should never again have to worry that our children are playing with lead-filled toys while the people that should be looking out for them are hopscotching around the world with corporate bigwigs. This is toxic travel, and we have to put an end to it. The American people deserve to have objective, professional safety inspectors, not wined and dined, pampered corporate house guests. We need to make sure that these product gatekeepers are looking out for one interest and one interest only, the well-being of the American people. And that's why Senator Klobuchar and I are offering this amendment to prohibit product regulators from taking trips sponsored by the industry that they regulate. I think Americans listening across the landscape of our country would say that's just common sense. Regulators should never be indebted to those they regulate. They should never be compelled to let a product slip by as thanks for the great golfing they shared or the fabulous trip they took, while children suffer as a result. So let me close by thanking my colleague, Senator Klobuchar, a member of the committee, for taking the lead in the committee to improve the safety of products that end up in the hands of our children. It's been a privilege to work with her on this amendment, and I certainly hope that our colleagues will join us in what they did as it relates to setting the high standard for every member of the United States Senate. Can't take travel by lobbyists, those who are there to protect the very essence of our safety and our lives, and those of our families should live to no less a higher standard. I urge my colleagues to support the amendment, and with that, Mr. President, I yield the floor.